Phoenix House's ability to accurately communicate with my mother the importance of not enabling me is entirely what I believe saved my life. And obviously that has a lot to do with like my mom's ability to listen to that information. But like, yeah, if my mom had just let me come back home, no shot I was staying sober.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. Like I just believe that in my spirit. And like my mom making the hard choices for like what was best for my life, my happiness, my longevity, you know, my relationships. Because she needed to make the hard choice because I couldn't make it. I didn't even know what the hell was going on, you know. So like, because my mom talks about that pretty consistently, especially since I started doing the podcast, like how thankful she is that she listened to what the professionals were telling her to do with me, because she would have messed it up, and I definitely would have messed it up. But so the ability to remain teachable and to walk through the fire on my side and on her side is really what put me in a position to be where I'm at today, you know, happy, joyous, and free and sober, you know, and have a terrific relationship with old Madre.
Shout out Meredith.
Yeah, shout out.
I love her name.
Yeah. We got a couple number one spot contenders, both named Meredith.
That's true.
Oh yeah, well she takes the number one. She because it's hard, you know, being a parent and making that choice. Like you love your kid, you want them, especially when they're well and they've done some work away from home. You're like, come on back, you know. But in reality, like in your case, you had some younger siblings at home, and it was a risk, you know, and it was what you needed. You know, you needed to go out and. Because you had turned 18, is that right? Like in treatment? Yeah,
I turned 18 and I graduated high school.
That's
all
right.
in Phoenix House.
All
God
in treatment. All in treatment. But yeah, and so I think that's huge that your mom was able to draw that boundary. That in parents that I work with, the ones that do have to make those hard choices, but actually hold the boundary that they set, I see success much more than a parent who's like, okay, we'll give it a shot. And then, you know, sometimes it works out and sometimes it just doesn't. But boundaries are everything. And I think that, and remind me too, when you were leaving, what got you to go to sober living? Was it your family or you wanted it?
I feel like it was my sponsor, number one, Josh Clement, shout.
Yes.
And also I think I was so broken. Like I had reached the conclusion that everything I know doesn't work and I need help. Whether that was from you, Josh, or my family. I was just willing to do it, or the justice system. You know, I had to turn myself in and I was just willing to do whatever it took. Yeah. And I had no idea what sober living was.
Yeah.
You know, but my Josh said he did it. It's a great idea. And I was like, okay, let's try it out. And thankfully our house was
live.
So fun.
It rare find.
Yeah.
Not the house itself, but just the moment in time. Yes. You don't find that often.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion. Like everyone was basically under 30 there.
Yeah.
You know, and some of the people didn't care, still were friends with them. But then you had like me, John, Michael Jackson, Michael Jackson, there we go. And we were just about it. Well, maybe not Michael at first, but Michael was still like there and still ready to have fun. Like he wasn't like an asshole, you know, trying to be a gangbanger.
Yeah.
You know, he was like willing to joke around and do whatever it took. And then Kyle Gruzleski came along, rest in peace. Like it was a time, you know, and it was very quickly recognizable as the right decision, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because you don't, again, like sometimes when you're working with someone, they're super resistant to the recommendations, especially a teen, right? So we want to partner with the parent and armor them up to say, nope, this is the way it's going to be, you know? And we see that to be a lot more helpful than if the parent caves, you know, and then gives in or anything like that. But for you're in a different place. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, what's the whole thing with parents that, because I'm not a parent, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, the closest thing I have to a kid is a little brother and sister, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like to have that relationship and just have that fear.
Yeah.
My parents were fine. They let me Like they held boundaries without ever talking to anybody.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Yeah.
But so what is it that parents can do? Like how can they approach that decision a little bit easier to where it's reachable, because it gets tough.
Yeah.
Especially with how many like people are dying nowadays. So like how can they approach that a little bit easier? Like what would you tell a parent?
I think that number one, for parents, there's resources out there for them. So if they're like, is this the right move or should I do this? You know, like, so for right now, the program that I'm at right now, we have free parent support groups throughout the week. And we have a parent coordinator who is incredible. Her name's Becky. Shout out, Becky.
Woo,
love you.
Becky.
You met her.
Yes.
So, but she, you know, she's a wealth of information. She's in recovery herself. And then she's in what she calls parent recovery. She had a teen that needed help. And so I would definitely recommend that they reach out to, you know, just like resources. There's Al-Anon. There's a podcast I love, Brad Reedy. He runs a program, but he also wrote the book Journey of the Heroic Parent. And he has a podcast that I listened to on my way here today, actually. It's called Finding You. And he has a Evoke therapy program, Evoke, EVOKE. And so listen to those podcasts. In fact, he talked about boundaries on the podcast today. So find resources, do your own work, get in therapy yourself, find, you know, like I was saying, Al-Anon groups, and then, yeah, armor up. You know, there's ed consultants. You can, you know, if you have financial resources, there are some really great ones that are out there that can walk the line with you and give you guidance. And I've worked with some really great ones to help families and teens. So, yeah.
But how do you make it important? Like all these resources are great.
Yeah.
But how do you get them to even consider it? Like, what is on the line? How do you convince them that they should even start that journey?
Yeah. Okay. This program that I'm consulting with right now, who's opening an adolescent IOP, they are implementing at admission. They are saying, you're going to have your own work and you're going to need to participate in family therapy, in parent support groups, and your own homework. And we're going to give them a list of books and things that they need to be doing. And if the parent isn't going to commit to coming to their part, then they're not going to admit the kid. And I think it's a hard line, but it's like if you got a 15-year-old and they're coming back to your house, you need to do your own work as well. And you need to be prepared for that. And I just think it's a really important piece. So they might come, and it's just like kids, you know, they might come and they might, you know, we might give them all the tools and they might choose not to do it. It's just like a teen coming into treatment or anyone coming into treatment. You're going to lay out, you know, what your plan is to help them. And eventually it's the individual's choice if they're going to implement what you're giving them, you know?
Yeah. I will say that, in my experience of working in treatment is I can do a few months of really great work with a guy just for it to all go out of the window because their parents or their wife or whoever is unwilling to like do their part as well. And it's aggravating because it is a family disease. It affects like my alcoholism and drug addiction affected so much more than just myself. But it's important to understand as well that sometimes the families are just as sick in a different way. Yeah. You know, and yeah, it's, everybody needs to do like their part. You know, it takes a village to raise a child type of ideology there. Yeah. And you know, if I'm just gonna send them to rehab and expect them to come out and everything now they're cured, it's like that's just an unrealistic expectation. You know, in my experience, and so it's a continuation for both the individual and and the family to continue working on themselves with the goal in mind of like, life is just going to get tremendously better if we can walk through this pain right now.
Yeah, right. I totally agree. Did that answer your question? I mean, you can't make anyone do anything, right? You can't make anyone. And that's the thing, is we're only in charge of our own selves, and we can guide, and we can, again, listen and validate. Oh, wow. It is hard to have a teen that is struggling with substances, but you're not in it alone. And that's the thing, is many people just try to do what they feel is the right thing without using those resources. They're there for a reason. So get the word out about great parent resources. Parent recovery is a thing.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that it's equally important with the parents to play their part for the success of the greater goal.
The Parallel Process. It's a book that I recommend all parents read. The Parallel Process, because it's a parallel process. You can't do it on your own. Your teen can't be over there doing their work and then you expect them to just come home and voila. And so that book is all about doing your part as well. So.
Yeah. What other books you got there?
I'm a visual person, and I also forget names. I know, obviously, Brad Reedy's book. I love it. It's great. Journey of the Heroic Parent. I would highly, highly recommend it. There's another one that's really helpful for parents, Beyond Addiction. And then, like I said, Parallel Process is what this little book looks like too. Those are kind of my go-tos when I'm working with parents that are like, what do I do? Or what is this thing? Those are 3 really, really great books to start with. And then, like I was saying, there's podcasts, there's blogs.
There are podcasts.
Yeah, but there are podcasts for parents, you know?
Yes.
And so Brad Reedy, just Google or search him up in your Spotify or Apple Music, and it's a really great podcast. Is that wedding ring? See, you're not married.
Oh, no.
Better put it back on. There you go. You're married again.
That was a close one.
Yeah. What under the...
I almost proposed to John right there. In the moment you were saying,
hey, when are you getting yours?
Yeah, fool.
I don't know. You got to ask Megan about that.
All right, we'll get her on the podcast next.
We got to get Megan on the podcast.
I need to meet her next. Yeah.
I can't believe you haven't met her. Yeah. Sometime in December, we'll get married next year.
Oh, I was going to say.
No.
Okay.
No.
My invitation got lost in the mail.
Yeah, no, that'll be a fun time. Okay, well, let's see. I think that's everything that we wanted to talk about. Is there anything specifically that you wanted to talk about? Like anything on your notes that we haven't covered?
No, I talked about parents, and I would say too, I thought it was important that a lot of times it's important for parents to remember that at the end of the day, that's still your child, and they might be covered by the veil of addiction and substance use and some challenging behaviors, but it's still your child, and connect with them. I feel like the connection and the power of attachment that you have in that child, take them to go, whatever it is, go do something, right? Connect with them before you're looking at what's right or wrong or good or bad. That attachment piece is so important. And so don't allow that veil of addiction to really push you away. If anything, this is the time to draw them in.
Well, it's kind of a weird scenario because you have kids who are who I don't want to say necessarily blame the parents, but they want nothing to do with that figure because it's different than what they want to do by themselves, like drugs and acting a fool or doing what they want with the freedom that they're barely getting the opportunity to experience. I never went out late until I was 16, 17, but my 14, 15-year-old friends were their parents didn't really care. They were skating or whatever. And then you got the parents who they're looking at the kids like, you're doing me wrong.
Yeah.
Because now I'm suffering, and then the kids are like, well, I'm suffering, and you want to change that. So it's you enter this process just butting heads, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that has to be a difficult scenario. Because you go to I never liked family therapy sessions because I felt like it was just an opportunity for my parents to be like, yeah, this is how it made me feel. And I feel like everybody was attacking me, and then if I didn't listen to my parents, we're back at square one where we were, where I just didn't listen.
Yeah. Yeah. Family therapy can be hard because it feels a little like we're just shooting, pointing fingers and all of that stuff. But if you find a really good family therapist who plays more of a neutral parental role, they can validate both sides of it and keep the marbles on the table, if you will, you know, and keep the family intact for a good family session. But it's challenging. And that's what I was saying is don't allow that and those behaviors to push you away to where you are, just so disconnected from your child, and they're in fear of getting honest with you. I work with some really great parents now that have this relationship with their teen where they can say like, hey, I messed up last night and here's what's going on. Or, hey, I'm thinking about it. You know, I'm really craving and I want to, and they're not in fear going to their parent to say that because the parent is secure and they have been doing their own work. So they're able to say, well, let's go to a meeting tonight, or let's go, whatever it is, let's get out of the house. Let's go take care of ourselves. Let's put some action right now since you're going through this. But the parents that have that huge reaction that are like, what? They're all they're doing is chasing their kid away, and their kid's not going to be coming to them in those vitally important moments. They've just created a huge canyon between the two of them, So that's the main thing that I want to armor parents with is, watch your own stuff, because that heal your own trauma, that's a heavy statement,
Mm-hmm.
but it's true, because that pops up and then here we are and we're just recreating the cycle. And so I always tell my parents to do your own work and don't watch that, draw them in, don't push them away, because you're just pushing them right out the door. So
can we talk about trauma for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So I feel like there's a stigma with trauma. Trauma is just this really big word. People associate trauma with rape, molestation, or drowning. Whenever I drown, big T trauma. And then you this new concept which I don't believe is a new concept. I think they just put a label to something of the little T trauma. Yeah. So the stuff that isn't as drastic or big. Right. But wouldn't you say that trauma is just very simply defined as an event or a circumstance that then shaped the way you think at any level? It's not this big thing, but it's just stuff that happened either once or over a course of a period of time that now you think and behave differently because of the impression that had upon you. So when you say heal trauma, it's that sounds like a big fucking thing. Yeah. But it doesn't always have to be, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point. I think my generation is, I think, doing a pretty good job at starting to work through things, but I think of my parents' generation and then my grandmother. My grandmother went through some crazy traumas as a child, and she's the most beautiful woman, and she's so powerful and so strong and so kind, and she didn't allow those traumas to change who she is. But she, through her experiences, then the way she parented was different towards my mom because of the way that she was raised. And then it's kind of come down, it's just gone through the family system. But there's this huge illusion that, it's so scary, trauma, but really it's important work. And it can be, like you were saying, it could be something that how you interpreted it was something that was hard or difficult or challenging or whatever it is, resulted in a behavior change or, a life-altering change sometimes, but I think that it is important for us to address that. And I think that I see that in my generation, where they're recognizing the patterns and they're wanting to make changes,
Yeah, I don't think it's this big. It could just be a couple little things that happen over and over, annoyances even, to where you're now closed off from talking to certain people because they exhibit these same behaviors that you were already fed up with at a minor level. Therefore, you avoid the connection, you avoid that interaction, you avoid that situation entirely because in your mind, it's not something that you want to do or be a part of anymore because you're already so annoyed with it. Mm-hmm. As a result, you miss out on that entire experience. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, you miss out on being proven wrong. Mm-hmm. If we just keep going through our life with the expectation, I know how this ends and I'm not going to go down that path because of it, I mean, we're just missing out, and we're staying in our like narrow lane, and it just seems it doesn't seem conducive at all for opening yourself up to the endless possibilities and varieties of what life has to offer you, or like the human relation has to offer you with other people.
Yeah, you said it perfectly, beautifully.
I'm in trauma therapy. I'm in trauma therapy.
I've always said you need to be a therapist. I know you won't, but
No.
you need to. You have a beautiful way at looking at things and verbalizing. I guess you do that through sponsorship, maybe with your sponsees, but a beautiful way at like looking at things differently, using perspective, and then almost like verbalizing. I mean, you have changed my life through having hard conversations and telling me things that I didn't want to hear or think about. And you were that person. And many times when I tell the story of what you told me, people are like, what? And I'm like, but that is the cool thing about you, is you can say it, and I know that it comes from love and from the best intentions. And we need therapists that aren't scared to have hard conversations, because sometimes it can be a little intimidating, but you do a beautiful job saying, like, don't be selfish.
He does.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a culmination of growth over the last 9 years almost.
Yeah.
Same with John. John articulates hope better than any, because John has a big goal of just putting things in their most simple form.
Yeah.
I remember one time I called John and he was like, okay, like I vented to him for a second. He's like, okay, let me get this down to its most simple form. So this is what we're talking about, right? And then he just went from there. And that's just stuck with me ever since.
Yeah. And, John, I think too, like I can remember a time when there was this kid that came in, he really needed help and he was really in a rough spot, and you took him on as a sponsee. And I was like at my house on the weekend, and this kid wanted to run away, and you sat and listened. I think we talked on three-way for like 30 minutes, and the kid did end up running away, but you did a beautiful job. Like, I do love that about you, where you're just like, this is it. And you do make it very simple and clear, especially for teens that are taking their first toe dip into the 12 steps and don't even know which way is up sometimes. You do a really great job at just simplifying it and making it attractive too, where they want to do it. Talk about the cooking wine and your adventures. And
this is not a time to bring that story up.
But I'm just saying, like, share your experience, and then the kids are like, that's a lot like me,
Is there an opposite to trauma? Because when we think about like negative
Yeah.
experiences, whether
Yeah.
it's minor like annoyances from many people or whatever to big things, is there an opposite word for trauma? Because when I think about like what you just said with John,
Yeah.
30 minutes of a conversation took him on, like one small thing from John has this massive impact. And I know like people that are kind to me that do very minor things, have a huge impact on me over time even. And so is there like an opposite word? I don't even if that's even the correct thing to ask, but because it makes you think every little thing you do matters.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the negative side of the spectrum or the positive side of the spectrum, and that sounds kind of cliche, like smiling, saying thank you and stuff. But then like you're a dick, and it's like, okay, yeah, they're gonna remember that too.
Yeah.
So it's like every little thing you do just seems to be huge, massive. And I don't know if there's like another word that's trauma or if it's positive trauma,
I actually have a response for that question.
Okay, go for it.
Because it's something that I have been working on in therapy. But so Jax, my therapist, she'll call them glimmers, right? So I have like traumatic experiences, which can be small or big, and I'll take them home and I'll think about them, or in my day-to-day life, they'll affect my actions or how I engage with people. And so like we've been going through this practice of like identifying glimmers of like moments that I feel happiness or joy, or, you know, just a positive one, and then being really intentional about thinking about that moment throughout the day. So, you know, like for example, not going to get terribly into it, but on Tuesday I had a really hard conversation with my old man, to the point where I had to leave work because I was not in a good place, and I was just rummaging around the old brain about it. But, you know, then Wednesday night I go over to, you know, our buddy's house who just had their second kid, and I'm holding like little dude. His name's Mason. He's amazing, and like I'm just filled with all this like happiness and joy. And so like, instead of like, whenever I started thinking about the stuff I went through with my dad, I would replace it with thinking about old Mason, and like, you know, just remembering that glimmer, you know, where I felt really nice, felt really happy, very content, and like a whole bunch of love and stuff. And so like, you know, and just finding that in like all types of different places, like whether it's a good conversation at work, as opposed to like focusing on the bad one, which I can do often, where I'm like, man, that was a hard conversation, or man, that guy really annoyed me. It's like, well, I had a great conversation with so and so, and it was beautiful and fantastic. And so like trying to, you know, for me, like replace those negative, you know, traumatic, you know, deals with what Jax calls glimmers, has been really beneficial to me, not getting in like a really bad headspace or staying in a bad headspace.
Glimmers.
Oh, there you go.
Glimmers.
Yeah, glimmers. I like that. What a good therapist.
Little glimmers of hope, dude.
Yeah, glimmers of hope. But, you know, I also like think of like DBT, right? Where like it's possible for two things to be true at the same time. Like we can have like some things go down, but then we also have glimmers. You know, we have big T's going on, but we have some glimmers going on maybe at the same time, you know. But I do like that term. That's nice. Glimmers. So I'm like, good
Glimmers.
things.
So for everybody listening,
Glimmers.
try and recognize if you're providing trauma for somebody or you're providing glimmers for somebody. There you go. Everything you do matters. You will make an impression either on yourself or somebody else, whether you like it or not. Stay hard.
Stay hard.
Who's gonna push the boats?
What?
It's a David Goggins deal.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Stay Hard's also a David Goggins deal.
Okay, love you both.
Damn.
I love you. Yeah.
Thank you, Meredith.
Yeah, thank you.